Hi, as you see, we have a Sony Vaio laptop. Um, if you notice, here, let me zoom the camera out a little bit. There's a little bit of misalignment here. What there is, this laptop has a broken hinge, but that's not the problem. The laptop actually quit working. The hinge is the lesser part of the trouble. As we flip it over, you notice here there's a cover missing over the hard drive. With pretty much all new laptops, it's quite easy to access the cases in most cases. And I believe what we've got here is quite literally just a fan problem. So I'll begin to open this up. Remove the battery. There are some very small screws. Inside the battery case, some very tiny and fine screws, as you see. Most of these cases come apart quite nicely. Let me zoom back out. Right here I'm removing a screw on the edge where the DVD player is. This screw locks in the DVD player. When you remove it, you can actually just slide out the DVD player. So if you ever needed to replace a broken DVD or CD player in your own laptop, that's how you do it. This model is specifically a Sony PCG81114L. Also, on the edge of this, the bezel here, there are some more of the extremely fine screws on the edge, just holding the trim down tightly. 3 of them here. They're identical to the 2 that I removed from the battery case. I'm just going to go through and remove the screws. This little doorway right here is where the memory is stored. In the case of performing a memory upgrade for a laptop, very often you just open a door, and right here are the memory SIMs, quite easily removed. Push apart the tabs at the ends and lift out the SIM. It's that simple. Or push it in. To install them, you put them in at an angle. There's a slot in the edge of the memory card that lines up with a tab in the socket for memory, and you just angle it in, push it in, and lock it down. It's very simple to add memory usually. Here's the hard drive. If you ever lost the hard drive in your laptop, in this case the cover was removed already. I don't know why. They had lost the cover, and you unscrew usually a couple of screws that lock in the hard drive, and very often there's a plastic tab attached to the hard drive to help you grasp it to move it sideways a little bit from the connector, and to pull it back on when you replace the hard drive. So that's how you remove the hard drive. Let me get a container to put all these screws in before I go further. Now I'm just continuing going around the edge, and I've been removing screws from around the periphery of the case. This is a heavier screw than most of them, as is this one also. These screws are part of the heavier support by the hinges, which takes a lot more stress when the top opens and closes. The screw's kind of stuck in there. That won't come out probably until we remove more from the case. Now, if I recall with this model, this particular screw that I'm taking out right now is slightly longer than usual. So I'm actually just going to take a little piece of tape, and I'm going to glue it, stick it down to the tabletop in a different place, just so that I remember it and it stands out and I don't mix it in with the others. It's just the way I want to do it with this. I'll finish removing these screws on the periphery. Sometimes when you're trying to open a laptop case, you're trying to separate the clamshell, and it's resisting you and you can't figure out why. And what it is you've managed to either miss or forget entirely to remove just one screw sometimes in one place. And that one screw will leave you wondering why you can't separate the shell. Most of these newer cases come apart very nicely and neatly. Remember some of the earlier model laptops, some of the earlier models were so difficult to open that as you cracked them apart, you literally would make cracking noises and you would think you were breaking the case. It was very awkward to work on older models. There we go. Now I know I've got one or two other screws in here, so there's the heavy screw for the other hinge, and two more screws. Now most of the screws are identical on the case, so there's not too much organization required usually in taking this apart. Like usually it's pretty easy to put them back together exactly where they came from. Now in this case, it was the cooling fan. The CPU cooling fan right here. That's not working. So actually, I can give this a test. If I slap this back together, I'll slip in memory at an angle, push it in and down. Another sim at an angle, push it down. It won't run, it will not start properly without its hard drive, so I will slide the hard drive in place. Right here's the hard drive bay. Slide the hard drive on. It'll start without the DVD player, but I definitely need power, so I have the power supply here and plugged in. Plug it into the jack, and that should allow me to start it up. Now let's see. It should boot up. Oh, in this case, the fan actually started. I'm amazed. Huh. But I'm not getting a screen. Oh, I know why. Just shut it down. Okay, the thing that I'm doing right now is I'm actually just removing this back plate off the CPU fan itself. I'm going to open the fan and check it. Probably has dust, filth. It sounded very rattly when it ran just now. I started this once before and it did not run at all, so I just simply suspect that the fan motor itself is quite shot. I was removing screws from the, as you see the heat sink here. This is the CPU. The heat sink absorbs heat this way, and the fan forces air over the heat pipes. And there are 4 screws here clamping this down onto the chip. Okay, so to just show you again, there's 4 screws here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and a couple of screws here. 1, 2, okay. Well, actually, I'm sorry, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 screws here that you remove. And this whole piece comes out like this. You unplug the little wires. There's a connector here, the power for the CPU fan, and you remove it. That's that. Now, after removing the fan, there are some small screws on the back plate right here. You remove them, and when you open this up to look inside the fan itself, you see here along this edge that it is absolutely packed with dust. So I'm going to clean that out right now. Okay, now what I've done is I've dusted this out. And what you do want to do, believe it or not, is blow dust from the outside of the vent to the inside, but you can only do this after you've removed the fan and opened it. Now you can see, if I turn this just right, you can see right through all of the veins, right through it, because I've removed the dust. You see that? And when I turn it a certain way, you can't see. But those are all copper veins, and they're designed to absorb hot air and dissipate heat. Anyway, I'm going to reassemble this thing and put it back together. Okay, so what I'm doing is just reassembling the fan itself, putting the little screws back in the back of it. that hold the silver plate on. CPU. Oops, where am I? So the CPU, and this is an auxiliary chip that is also on the heat pipe to have heat transmitted away by this system. Okay, and what they do here, if I can position this where you can see it, as you see here, this is the CPU, this is the second chip, and we've got 4 screws around each to hold it in place. This goes on this chip. Get this lined up. Heating is one of the biggest problems in a laptop. A lot of times you've got to open it just to remove dust. Everything will work fine, but you got to keep it clean. And the dust gets packed inside these fans. And if the openings are packed, well, then it can't breathe now, can it? Okay. Heat pipes are clamped down here over the CPU and over this chip. Now you see this plug. Just push the wires back in. There you go. Okay. Make sure the hard drive is in place. Make sure the battery's in. Just testing it to see if it fires up. doing is right here along the COM ports and stuff, sliding the clamshell back over the edge, and so it kind of clips into place. Oops, the power cord is entangled with my headset. Okay. And I just push down on the edges a little bit, getting it roughly into place. And then what we'll do is sock the screws back down all around the edges in the same way that we took it apart. Here and there. Most of the screws, like I said, are the same, so. Did a couple of tests powering it up, and the CPU fan is definitely shot. In fact, it's making a horrible squealing noise, which is what happens sometimes when the bearings go in a little motor, or even a bigger motor. It wasn't working at all when I got the thing, and then when I cleaned it out, the fan actually began to operate a little bit. But without proper cooling, the CPU won't run longer than like 30 seconds or a minute. It overheats almost immediately. It's very quick. The chips actually run very, very hot. And if I can, I'll reassemble this quickly and show you. Okay, now these thick, heavy screws go on the insides here of the feet, one on each side. And I'll have to leave it up to the customer to see what they want to do. For me to order the part, a CPU fan will cost about 40 bucks. This hinge is actually broken, so while the laptop does still technically work, question is it worth, fixing? Paying me for a little bit of time to fix this, ordering the part. By the time you're done spending the 75 or 100 bucks you're going to spend, you're halfway to a brand new a tablet. Depends on how attached you are to a piece of machinery, if you want to keep it, if you want to save it and invest in it. The repair of a PC or a laptop is actually kind of the purview of technical schools now, because only a technical school can afford to give away labor, like when they're training new students. And the work can be, it's not like you're a highly paid technical professional. Whoops, oh, this is that exceptionally long screw that goes in there. Yeah, that's this screw. So there were the two thick and heavy screws and this one exceptionally long screw that went in here. Well, like I was saying, it's not like you're going to get rich from repairing PCs, unless you do like 10 of them at $30 each a day. And that's not likely. That is not likely to happen. Okay, now this is how the DVD goes in, just slides in, and there's one screw that locks it in place to keep it from sliding out. And this is the hard drive bay. There's a tab to pull it on and off the connector. Put it in, and you slide it onto the connector. And likewise, there's a couple of screws that will lock it into place and keep it from wiggling around in its bay. And then there were the little tiny screws in the edge of the, oh, actually I've got to take the DVD player back out because there are the bezel screws go in the edge right here. It fits so well together, it's almost like it doesn't need screws, but you really should make sure those screws are in. So you don't want the edge of the plastic to catch on the edge of the DVD at all. And there were two very fine screws holding the plastic down inside the battery bay as well. Same type screws as in the bezel of the DVD bay. Okay. Okay. Slide the DVD player back in. A screw to anchor it. And what I'll do is I'll test fire it up. And if we are lucky, we'll see how it runs. And if we're lucky, it will run. But I think I've got to break some bad news to the customer that this laptop is about done. Okay, let's see what happens. Hear that noise? Oh my goodness, it's horrible. Oh my goodness. Wow. Well, that's about that. We'll see what this customer says, but this is a typical end for an aging PC. If you're lucky, it's cheap. Like I said, very often if I've got used parts, I'll throw it in for a customer. Each case is its own special case. Talk to you later.